Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's your host, Sarah, and today I have Michelle here from what is your Instagram handle?
The Mindful Wildflower.
The Mindful Wildflower. Michelle's super excited to have you here and can't wait to hear your story. Introduce yourself. Who are you and kind of what are you here to talk about?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. My name is Michelle. I host the Mindful Wildflower on Instagram and TikTok. And so I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder about 4 years ago now. And through that, started doing some dialectical behavior therapy. And learning dialectical behavior therapy, I was just blown away by the practicality of the skills and just how applicable they were to anyone's life and how they really just made life worth living for myself, and I wanted to just share that with everyone that I possibly could. And that's where the Mindful Wildflower was born. So, yeah, I'm here just to share a little bit more about my story, about the Mindful Wildflower, and just to really spread awareness about what borderline personality disorder is and kind of erase some of the stigma that exists.
Way cool. So, how old are you?
I'm 35.
So, you were diagnosed late.
I was, yes.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I struggled through high school. High school was a very tumultuous time. A lot of struggles with friendships and relationships, and just a lot of really big ups and downs. A lot of just not knowing if I wanted to live most days, and really high highs, really low lows, and just not understanding why I was so different from everyone else. And so yeah, just struggled through. I tried to ask for help from my parents, and they at the time just didn't really understand mental health and what supports were out there, and just kind of attributed what I was going through to adolescence. And then through my college years, I continued to struggle. My doctor just put me on antidepressants, and that was kind of it. Tried some talk therapy, and that didn't do a lot. It was kind of helpful just to talk through things, but wasn't making any impact on my symptoms at all. And so through just struggling through those years, I ended up in an abusive marriage for a couple of years. And then after that, kind of just siloed myself for a few years. I just worked nonstop and just didn't really have a lot of a life outside of work. I was very closed off in my friendships. I was pretty closed off just interpersonally in general. And so was really not living a life at all. And that was in my early 30s. And so at that point, I just realized like I'm still very young and I'm not living life at all. I need to actually figure something out. And so that's what really kickstarted. Like, I need to see a psychiatrist and actually get some kind of diagnosis and get the actual supports that I can. And that's really what kicked off that whole journey of, okay, I need some more support here. I need to figure out what's actually going on with myself, because something is different. And there needs to be some different kinds of supports if something is different. So yeah, it was a struggle getting through those years and just not really understanding what support was out there and not knowing who to contact or what to, like, why I was different was, yeah, a lot of really hard years for sure.
And what was childhood like? Like, are your parents still together?
Yeah, I actually have a very different story than most people with borderline personality disorder, where my parents are still together. I grew up in a pretty nice Christian family that was, they loved me and they tried very hard. And so there were definitely big moments of invalidation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have BPD. But for the most part, I did grow up in a fairly stable childhood. I think obviously, there are some things in my family history. There's some history of depression and suicide, and there is definitely a genetic factor of just being emotionally sensitive. And so those kind of all contributed to the BPD. And then, of course, the trauma of my abusive marriage really impacted it and kind of escalated the emotions and the symptoms that I was having. So yeah, I have a very interesting BPD story that's, yeah, a little bit different than most.
Yeah, that must be really strange for you that like most people that you meet may have had like profound childhood traumas or just adversities or whatever. Do you ever feel like almost like a sense of survivor's guilt that maybe your childhood didn't involve that?
Absolutely. And I still to this day question, like, is there trauma that I just don't remember? Because I do have big gaps in my memory and I do have borderline personality disorder. So I have the kind of symptoms that would indicate that maybe more has happened in my childhood. Maybe it did, and I don't have any knowledge of that. But I really, yeah, it's a very weird feeling of like hearing these dramatic stories of like, oh, of course you have BPD because you went through this massive trauma. And then for myself to have, well, I have maybe little traumas here and there and little bits of invalidation, but why has my BPD exploded so much when I haven't been through what maybe other people have been through?
Yeah, I often feel like my childhood, there was quite a bit of like family system trauma, but my parents are like still married and we had secure housing and there was no food insecurity or any of those like basic like trauma things. Like there wasn't like child abuse or anything like that, but there was a profound amount of family trauma that was existing around me that was really like chaotic. And I do sometimes feel that like guilt also, even though there was the trauma happening and it had this profound effect or whatever, like I wasn't hurt, just like some of those basic things or like being financially like very well supported and like, I don't know, I feel that guilt sometimes too, which it's like a strange thing because shouldn't it be celebrated that we had that experience? But then, like, it's not the experience that everybody has, which is like profoundly unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think just like, yeah, that guilt of knowing that there's a reason why other people are this way, but do I have a reason to have these symptoms? And just feeling like, yeah, I don't have an excuse to be this way, and then just beating myself up for, oh, I am emotional, I am dramatic, I am whatever adjective I want to throw in there that day. But then it becomes a me issue and not just a symptom, which it is a symptom, and it is something that I can manage and not necessarily a personality trait about myself. But yeah, it's still things that I have to put the work into to I want to manage the symptoms properly.
Definitely. I heard you mention speaking of trauma, I heard you mention family suicide, and I don't know if you've listened to this podcast before, but my mom was one of seven. Three of my uncles have died by suicide. I was aware at a really young age the graphics about that. And I'm just wondering, like, for you having family suicide, like, how has that impacted you?
Yeah, again, it was something that was very much not talked about. So I think mental health kind of in my family up until my up until my early 30s, I would say, we didn't talk about mental health. And so actually didn't know that it was a cousin of mine that had passed away through suicide. And I didn't know that it was suicide until years and years later because it just wasn't talked about. So, yeah, I think that kind of just added to the fact that we don't talk about it. It's even in the most extreme case where a life was taken, there wasn't a conversation around it. There wasn't, hey, this is what happens when you are struggling. This is what happens when you need support. This is where you can go. This is what it looks like. And so I think that was a big struggle. And I think, I don't know why the timing of like when I was in my early 30s, my mom started finally going to Sash Bear does a family connections course. And She had a friend that had done it before and had kind of known some of our history and just suggested that it would be good for my mom to take. And my mom kind of took it just as like, if she took it, she'd be able to help other people, but not knowing that she needed it herself. And so while she took that, that would be kind of the catalyst of what happened in our family to like really change how we looked at mental health as a family. And that opened up the conversations of, okay, let's actually talk about like what is depression? What does it look like? And why don't you want to get out of bed? And let's actually talk about what that feels like. Sash Bear really opened up a lot for my family in that, and that's also kind of what kickstarted then me going. It was about the same time frame of then me going and looking at getting a diagnosis as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people listening, myself and the previous co-host of this podcast, we've done an episode with the founder of Sash Bear, and then we presented as well with them. So there's past episodes about that. If you just search Sash Bear in the like search bar of the podcast, go back and listen to those. So you've mentioned this abusive marriage that you were in. Do you feel like comfortable sharing a little bit more about kind of that experience and like the impact?
Yeah, I think that that was one of the most transformative times of my life. I look back at it and just I can see my symptoms shining their brightest during that time because the invalidation and the control were just monumental. And I didn't have the tools at the time to deal with any of what I was going through. And so I felt absolutely crazy and can look back at times that like we were struggling or we were in a fight and I just could like feel the instability in my body of just like I don't understand how to function with all of these emotions and like literally just wailing on the floor and just not knowing what to do with my body. And yeah, there are many kind of visual memories I have of myself just like out of body experience being so out of control because my symptoms were so bad and the invalidation was so bad that it was just this like cycle of I was at my worst, and then that would escalate the invalidation and the control and the abuse. And so it was, yeah, a really rough year that we were actually married, and then another year after trying to go through the process of the courts, and there was some criminal proceedings as well because of the abuse. So yeah, it took a long time kind of going through all of that. I will say that it woke me up because I had grown up in a really sheltered house and a really sheltered upbringing. This abuse really woke me up to what life is like and what people go through, and just gave me a sense of compassion and empathy for people that I just didn't have before. I kind of always grew up thinking like bad things happen because you're involved in bad things. And if you kind of just shelter yourself and you kind of just keep yourself in good relationships and a good job and a good whatever, then you're safe from all of that. But that's just not how the world works at all. So it just gave me a lot of compassion to see like most people are hurting and just give a lot more grace to people and understand that, yeah, there can be hurt anywhere and for any reason.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a profound amount of privilege that you have to have that perspective, right? And then to unpack that privilege and be like, oh, wow, like I'm going through this terrible thing and I'm losing some of that privileged thinking pattern that I once had.
Yeah.
Like there must be a lot of grief all around.
Yeah, I would say like losing that privilege, I would say, is my greatest gift because I like I look back at who I was before this abuse and before, like, I was very religious and was living just, yeah, in a bubble of, if I hide myself in this bubble, life is perfect. And not that nothing ever hurts me, but nothing big will ever happen. And then, yeah, shifting that to ending up in this abusive marriage where, like, I didn't feel like I deserved what I was going through. I didn't feel like that I did anything to deserve it. It just really, yeah, changed who I am as a person. And I think I'm very thankful that I went through it. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, and I don't want to go through it again by any means, but I'm very thankful for what I went through because it did really open my eyes and my perspective to what actually goes on in the world.
Mhm. I wouldn't be thankful if I was you, right? Like, I don't know, like sometimes we say like I needed that trauma to end up on the other side, but like you would have, I really believe you would have gotten to that perspective eventually. Really
Yeah.
believe that without having to go through that. Not to invalidate your trauma, right? Like if you feel like you're thankful, then that's a beautiful thing, but like
Yeah, I guess thankful is not the right word for it because I'm definitely not thankful for the trauma or the abuse, but I'm thankful for where it brought me, I guess. And so I think you're right that other things could have brought me there and probably would have brought me there. I think I am the person that I am meant to be, and I think I would have ended up here regardless. And yeah, I think you're right not to give the power to the abusive person that kind of, yeah, that happened because of that, yes, but it could have happened regardless. I think you're right in that.
yeah, I believe that full-heartedly. And that's like such a common thing for people who have survived trauma is that rationalization of like, I needed this to be who I am. Like it's how we like accept that the trauma happened to us instead of just accepting that the trauma happened to us. And like, yes, we were a person who experienced trauma or a victim of trauma or however you identify with your trauma, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's a great thing to be aware of for sure. I think, yeah, I definitely have, yeah, gone through phases of accepting the trauma, and I think that's a great kind of difference to depict is, yeah, are you accepting that you're like thankful for it, or are you just accepting that, yeah, this is the reality? It's not good, it's not bad, it's just this is what happened. Well, it is bad, but
Yeah, it's totally bad, right? What would you tell, especially women who are in domestic violence situations? Like what would you tell them?
it never feels bad enough to leave. Um, and if you're thinking about it at all, it's already bad enough to leave. And that's, I think, everyone I've talked to since going through this. And since going through this, I've heard so many stories of women who have been in the same situation or are in a similar situation. And a lot of them say the same thing. Well, it's just, it was one time, or it wasn't that bad, or he didn't mean it, or it won't happen again, or just all of those things kind of invalidating how bad it is. And I would say if there's any kind of violence, it's going to escalate. And especially if they're not getting help, they're not in therapy, they're not working on it. Yeah, it's going to get worse. And yeah, do your best to find a safety plan, whether that looks like getting out immediately. I know I want to be careful with that because getting out is the most dangerous time. So make sure that you have a safety plan and some support involved. But I think it is a reality that you do kind of get separated, whether you think that it's your partner that's separating you from your friends or whether you think you're the one that's separating and pulling back from friendships. But you do kind of get isolated when you're in an abusive relationship. And so as you start to notice that, try and keep an eye on like who's around you, who is your circle. And if you're feeling like it's shrinking, it's on you to really reach out and try and make sure that you still have those connections outside of the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was in a marriage and I remember there was no domestic violence, but I remember afterwards, probably like 2 or 3 years, sitting in therapy and being like, oh, my ex-wife was like highly controlling. Like, shit, how do I sit with that?
Mm.
And like, also, like, I took all her shit out of the closet and threw it down the stairs and was like screaming and like, like I behaved in a way I didn't want to as well. But like, I remember that moment of being like, oh, like, I didn't have control. Like, I didn't have decision-making power. Like, I was made to be small.
Yeah, you don't realize that in the moment, and it's very hard to see that it's another person doing that to you and to see that impact because you just feel small. You don't necessarily feel like, oh, I once was feeling so much bigger and now I feel. It's just you feel small in that moment and you're not really thinking about what the impact was and why you felt that way. You're just realizing I feel small now and I don't know what to do about it. So I think, yeah, I definitely felt powerless and a lack of control and just like I lost myself, but I didn't realize that it was a person that was making me lose myself. I just was so caught up in the relationship and everything that was going on that yeah, didn't understand why I was such a small version of myself.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, dude, that that happened.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
So, are you in a relationship now?
I'm not. I am single.
Have you dated since?
I've dated a little bit. I went through a period right after my marriage where I had just left the church as well, and so yeah, was kind of the good Christian girl up until my marriage, and then had a couple of years where I had just left the church and just left my marriage and just dated like crazy, and nothing serious, but just, yeah, dating around. And then after those couple of years, things just really slowed down. I slowed down and had one relationship that I actually shared my borderline personality diagnosis, and it was a pretty healthy relationship. He didn't have the capacity to want to put as much as was needed in the relationship at the time. I was going through a job change and was a little bit more in need of support, and he didn't want to provide that. So that's why that one ended. But he was actually kind of gave me hope that you can have a good relationship with borderline personality disorder and that I can, because it's easy enough to see it for other people, but then to believe it for yourself is a whole other thing. And so this was the first relationship that I felt like I can honestly communicate about my BPD. He knows about it, was okay with it, and gave some support. And I think, yeah, just I don't have any bad things to say about the relationship. I mean, I'm sure I could think of a few, but nothing overwhelmingly negative. It was kind of just a nice little moment to show that it's possible and that I am capable of a healthy relationship. That just wasn't the one for me. And that was about a year ago.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that like that started to set the bar, right? Of like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, these are the basics. Like this is like the basic thing I need to have in a relationship. And then like everything can blossom from there, right? But like when you have borderline and your symptoms are really active, often you can't see like this is the bar that should be set because you're like, let me just accept any love I can have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very clear way of putting it, especially like the contrast of going from dating kind of all over just for the fun of it to an actual relationship that, yeah, this is the bar. This is what it could look like. And yeah, these are kind of the basics of what a relationship would be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to learn that lesson because then you're like, every relationship I was in beforehand was just this. desperate desire for connection and like so profoundly unmanageable and unhealthy and not supportive and all of those things. So tell me about the advocacy work that you're doing.
Yeah, so started the Mindful Wildflower about a year and a half ago, and it is all about BPD and just sharing what BPD is like, sharing a lot of DBT skills and tools as well. And really, it's just the stigma behind BPD is awful. And there's so much negative information. If you Google it, it's awful. If you want to learn about your diagnosis, don't Google. Learn from people instead, because there's a lot of just scary information about BPD, and I think especially online and in Instagram and TikTok, there's free commenting, so people can say whatever they want. I had someone comment something really graphic, so I won't repeat it, but it was such a negative thing against people with BPD, basically saying that we shouldn't be alive, and just commented that on one of my posts talking about BPD. And that's a very real belief that's out there. People have been hurt by people with BPD, and so those are very vocal people. And so they'll say a lot of really negative things about BPD in general, and then that gets put on anyone with BPD. And so, yeah, I really just want to be able to break down that stigma. It's been amazing being a part of a community of people with BPD and seeing like the amazing things people are doing that have BPD, there are BPD therapists, there are BPD advocates, and people that are doing just really amazing things. There are people in really healthy relationships with BPD. There are people that are great moms. There are people that are great friends. And so just seeing all of the different success in the community been really impactful and really amazing to see that like this isn't a life sentence. This isn't something that, although it is something that you will work with forever, it doesn't mean that it has to be, yeah, you can't do certain things because of this diagnosis. It doesn't have to limit you in those ways. And so I think, yeah, I've just really been passionate about sharing things online. I'll be doing a conference next weekend. I don't know when this podcast will come out, but the end of April is the conference in Toronto for the National Association of Studies of Personality Disorders. So I'll be going to that and having a booth just to, again, spread awareness and share what's possible with BPD. And I also create some DBT inspired tools. So I sell journals, card decks, stickers, all of that jazz, just to have a little bit more fun in your DBT learning and something that feels like you're not alone, something that reminds you that someone else created this, that has been there, that gets it. And I think, yeah, just sharing those things helps me feel like I'm part of, yeah, making the stigma a little bit smaller.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a therapist. I have a client whose mother is like very clearly borderline, right? But we were kind of talking and I was like, it's not my job to diagnose your mother. And I see some tendencies of this thing called borderline personality disorder that are standing out to me. And then I was like, and don't go read about it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do not go. Like, we went over the criteria, and I was like, "Does anything resonate with you?" And she was like, "Absolutely. Like, almost all of this resonates with me." And I was like, "Listen, here's the thing I want you to know about borderline is like it's a combination of trauma and genetic predisposition, and really what it comes down to is a profound amount of feelings, like really, really, really big feelings that makes it hard to function unless someone is getting treatment." Like I was like, do not go on Reddit. Like you don't need to do that to yourself or like to your mother even, right? Like, because shit is bad out there.
Yeah, it's rough. Yeah, I think that people just they have gotten hurt in the past, and they will just blame things. It's very easy just to say, just kind of like narcissism, or it's a very easy thing to just go, oh, they're borderline, oh, they're narcissistic, and not understand the rest of the story. Yeah, the stigma is rough.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up narcissistic personality disorder because that the whole dialogue around like so and so is a narcissist just like it really pisses me off. Like I'm like, listen, you don't have almost any understanding of like what that means. This is just like a pop psychology word and like these are people that are actually like really struggling with functioning. And that's not to like justify any of the things that they've done. Just like I can't justify throwing my ex-wife's shit down the stairs and like screaming and being mean and all of the things that I did before I got sober, before I was treated and whatever. But like this is a very real thing. Like people are not necessarily intentionally trying to ruin your life. Maybe there are some people that are. I'm not saying there aren't, but like if we can look at this from a like real diagnostic perspective instead of just like throwing out these pop psychology terms, that just really grinds my fucking gears.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just is kind of a cop out of like, they are this thing and they can't be anything else. And it removes the ability to grow when you just say, oh, they're just a narcissist, oh, they're just borderline. Where is the growth? Where is the ability to learn and use skills? And it just, it, yeah, puts a label on them, and that's all there is to them. And so I think that's the really damaging part about any kind of stigma, whether it's borderline or narcissism or any other label out there. It's, if you only see that one thing in a person, then you're going to have a very limited view. And it limits them as well. It makes you feel like when someone calls me, oh, she's just borderline, it makes me feel like I don't have the possibility, I don't have the opportunity to use skills. That's just who I am, and that's what's going to happen. But when you're able to see a little bit more, and when you're able to open it up and ask questions and learn about it, that's when you can see, like, okay, yes, I have borderline, and I can learn skills. I can practice mindfulness. I can practice distress tolerance, emotion regulation. I can practice these things, and be a more compassionate human. So I don't have to let my diagnosis define me, nor does any other diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm facilitating an 8-week DBT group right now, right? It's my like most favorite thing that I do. I love individual therapy, but it can get like very exhausting and groups are so fun. If I do too many groups back to back, that's also exhausting as well. But like to watch these skills change people's lives is the most rewarding work that like I do as a provider and a clinician. And I imagine like in a different way, since you're not a therapist, like you probably feel the same, right? Like teaching these skills to people and then you may not know what they do with them, but like in a intimate way, but like you know that these skills are life changing. And so, and maybe you do know what people are doing with them in an intimate way because they're in your DMs telling you and stuff like that. But just like, isn't it so fucking cool?
Yeah. And I mean, to know the impact in my own life first, and to see like they do work. They have changed relationships. They have made relationships better. They have made life actually worth living, for myself. And then to be able to not only see that impact in my own life, but then to share that with others, as you're saying, like, yeah, it really is so exciting. Just a couple weeks ago, I did a little trend about jumping to one song every morning. And I had so many people message me and say, oh, I just did this, because you posted this, or oh, I have been jumping as well. And it's just a little exercise to get your heart rate moving, and yeah, just get some blood flowing and kind of shift your perspective. And just to see even that small little action that people were jumping on that, and doing as well, just shows like yeah, you don't have to do a lot. You don't have to come up with some like new trendy thing on some new like trendy reel or anything. It's just people want to see real life how DBT actually works. And yeah, I think that's what impacts people, and that's what keeps me going. That's why I just started posting just to make the DBT skills more ingrained in myself. If I'm posting content about it, I obviously have to like learn and understand the content, so it's helpful for myself. But then, yeah, that added bonus of seeing and hearing it impact people and how just even those like small little things change their day is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're doing is so cool. I've been following the morning jumping to one song and I was like, this is so cute and fun and simple, right? Like these skills can be simple.
Yeah.
Like that's a mindfulness skill.
Yeah, and I think that's when I first started DBT, I thought, these skills are not really skills. They're just doing, like, they're just life. And it's just doing what you should do to take care of yourself. Like, they're too simple, there's not enough to it. And then as I continued to learn and understand, yes, they are very simple, but if you practice them in moments when you're not in distress, they become a lot more natural when you're in distress to practice, even though it's simple, even though it's maybe only 5 seconds of stopping. Those 5 seconds can be life changing in stopping and taking a different choice before you react. And yeah, maybe it's just dunking your face in water, which seems silly, seems like a silly little trick that how much of a difference can that make? But yeah, sometimes that like little breath of relief and that little moment of reprise from that cold water splashing on your face is enough to drastically change the trajectory of what life was going to look like in that moment. So yeah, I think the skills are simple, but they're life changing for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that you've been able to do all of this in just like 4 years, right? That you've become so skilled in just a short period of time. Because, like, in retrospect, 4 years really isn't that long. Like, you got your diagnosis, 1,200 days ago. Like, that really is not that long. And you've been able to learn these skills, teach these skills, be a part of other people's lives with these skills. Like, that's way cool in such a short amount of time.
Thank you. Yeah, I building mastery was the skill that kind of escalated everything, I would say. So when I was going through this whole process, I was employed, and then as I was going through it, realized that the job that I was working at was not in line with a life worth living. And so I ended up quitting that job and being unemployed, and had no idea how challenging it would be to find work again. And so for about a year, I was unemployed. And that's when I thought, like, I'm just going to put everything into this mindful wildflower. I'm going to put everything into learning DBT and understanding it, because what else am I going to do? I need to do something to build mastery. And that was the skill that really stuck out to me as like, I don't have a life that I feel like is worth living right now. And what's the best way to do that is to build mastery and start building my confidence and my competence in what I'm doing in life. And so I just took whatever I could learn that day. So whether it was a new skill or learning something that I was able to learn in Canva, doing a Canva tutorial so I could do more posts or create the journal, or I just kept wanting to create more and more about DBT in order to build my mastery and to build that confidence and competence that I was lacking. So it really just kind of was a catalyst in, because I was unemployed, because I needed these skills, it was just kind of a whole conglomerate of things that came together and kind of it was that catalyst to, yeah, really making this go very quickly. And yeah, just I am a very passionate person. I think that's one thing about BPD for myself, that I have a lot of passion about everything that I do. And so when I do something, I do it 100%. And I think that's where, yeah, I found out about DBT and was like, okay, I'm 100% in. Let's do it. And let's see where this will go.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So what have we not talked about that we should talk about before we close?
Yeah, I think just the hope that there is for people with BPD. I think we've kind of touched on that, but I think that would be just the one thing that I would highlight again is yeah, it's not a death sentence. It's just it's a diagnosis, it's information, and if you take it as information to help you and information to understand yourself more, it can actually be a really beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful community of people, and yeah, I would say with for anyone listening that has BPD, if you are not involved in the community yet, get connected to see what people are doing that have BPD because it's really inspiring to see what's possible and what limitations don't exist.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time, my friend. I can't wait to see what else you do. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, the period mindful period wildflower, and on TikTok as well. And then you can find me on my website at mindfulwildflower.ca.
Oh, that's right. You're in Canada. I can tell from your accent.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom, and I can't wait for people to hear.
Thank you so much.
Hi, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to the Bold, Beautiful Borderline podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your content. That is super helpful for me. It helps us find additional folks who want to listen to the show, want to feel seen, family members who want to learn, and partners who want to understand. If you want to follow along to more than just the podcast, find us on Instagram at Bold Beautiful Borderline, find me at Borderline from Hell, or head over to boldbeautifulborderline.com where there's information, resources, a place to leave a voicemail to be heard on the podcast, which I love, and just general content. All of that information can be found in the show notes. And if you want to get exclusive content, which is bonus episodes, journal prompts, worksheets, all sorts of extra stuff, sometimes videos of me with my hair very crazy with kind of impulsive borderline rants, head over to Patreon and consider becoming a member. That is super helpful with creating content that allows me to destigmatize BPD and all of the other wild mental health struggles that we discuss on the podcast. A huge thanks to everyone who joins on the podcast to share their story and just generally helps keep this thing alive. Especially my friend Corey Evans from the Evergreen Band. He produced and created the music that is the intro and outro for this show, as well as the cover art that was created by my husband, Talon Abbott. Their information is found in the show notes. All of the information discussed in the podcast is purely personal experience. This is not medical recommendations. This is not therapy recommendations. There's no producer for this show. It's all me.